J.D. Vance was overseas in Hungary and Pakistan, and now he is headed here, home, domestically, to Iowa. Headed there in about 2 weeks to give a boost to GOP incumbents facing Democratic challengers, but maybe also setting his sights on 2028. After all, it is Iowa. Joining us, New York Times reporter and MS Now contributor Teddy Schleifer. All right, Teddy, tell me about all the ways in which J.D. Vance is preparing for his political future.
So J.D. Vance has been the RNC finance chair for the last year plus, and he's been using that to basically position himself to run for president next year. His allies think it's likely that he's going to run. They're preparing to run. I can tell you from talking to people in his orbit over the last couple of weeks, they would be surprised if he did not. And he's beginning to make plans to do so. And one of the ways he's doing this is by raising money for the RNC, which, in addition to helping raise the committee $60 million, is also putting J.D. Vance in front of a lot of people who could be pretty helpful to him next year.
Who exactly are those people?
So there are billionaires like Paul Singer, who is a Republican mega donor who actually worked pretty hard to make sure J.D. Vance was not the vice president a year or two ago. Paul Singer is a J.D. person. He's gotten close with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is also close to Elon Musk, as we've sort of have seen them, get to know each other pretty well over the last year, I'd say. J.D. Vance has also been meeting with people like Peter Thiel. We reported that Thiel and Vance had a meal together at the vice president's residence a few weeks ago. This is all happening, of course, Katie, behind the scenes. Like, no, we're not seeing J.D. Vance do these things. Like, we're seeing him in Iowa, we're seeing him in Hungary. But he is not doing these things solely out of the goodness of his heart. He wants to raise money for the RNC, but he's also pretty aware that people like Peter Thiel and Paul Singer could be pretty helpful if he runs next year against maybe someone like Marco Rubio.
Is he somebody that, or is he right now the favorite among the billionaire donor Republican class? Or is there a feeling that, I don't know, someone like Marco Rubio might be better? If there are concerns about J.D. Vance among these folks, what are they?
Yeah, I think there are concerns. I mean, I think there are folks in the kind of more pro-Israel community who are concerned about Vance's ties to Tucker Carlson. They believe that someone like Marco Rubio would be more, in line with kind of the traditional, at least traditional pre-Trump foreign policy positions. So I don't think those people are excited about J.D. Vance. But Vance, and our reporting that I did with my colleague Shane Goldmacher today, has been working to neutralize those concerns. Someone like Miriam Adelson, who is you would think on paper this person should be a Marco Rubio person. Adelson is very pro-Israel. J.D. Vance, these Israel donors have questions about Vance's ties to the state of Israel. But J.D. Vance and Usha Vance have gotten to know Miriam Adelson pretty well, in part because of his role as the RNC finance chair. So even though there are some doubts about Vance amongst the billionaire class, he very quietly and very savvily has been working to neutralize those people, and maybe not turn them into J.D. Vance mega donors, but make sure that they're not haters. And I should say, Marco Rubio has said publicly a couple times now that he's not going to run against Vance, or at least has strongly implied he won't do so. So I think, Vance may be a favorite with these people just because it's unclear at this point, at least as of this spring, whether there will be credible opposition to him from other people.
All right, Teddy Schleifer, really good to have you. Thank you so much.